Everybody. So we are going to get started in just a minute. I'm going to allow a minute or so for people to log on if they're running a little bit behind. If anybody has any questions or if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, just put it in chat and we'll try to figure it out together. Alrighty, well, I think that we are about ready to get going. So hello, and thank you to everybody for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us in discussing Red Rover State Housing Grants. My name is Laurel, and I'm going to be presenting. My wonderful coworker Rachel is going to be answering any questions that are chatted during the presentation. We will have a questions portion of the presentation towards the end, and if there's any questions that have been asked multiple times or something that we'd really like to speak about further, then she'll set those questions aside so that we can address them then along with whatever questions you might have at that time. We are recording this webinar, and we're going to send out an email with a link to everybody who registered. So if anyone has to leave before we're finished, you won't miss anything. Or if you want to share this with your coworkers, it'll be there for you to do so. Let me send out a really quick poll to everybody before we get started, just to see what you guys are interested in. Not quite sure how to get this off of my page. There we go. All right, fantastic. So it looks like split between on-site and startup, which is fantastic. It's, that's a lot of the interest that we've been getting over the phone and in email. And hopefully for our not sure, we will help to point you towards a good choice before the end of this webinar. And so what we're going to be talking about today are just learning about Red Rover's safe housing grant options, and then answering some of the questions that are most frequently asked to us about including pets in domestic violence shelter programs. And so before we get started, just a little bit of information about Red Rover. We are a national nonprofit organization, and we've been in operation since 1987. Our mission is to bring animals from crisis to care and strengthen the bond between people and animals. Through our Red Rover Readers program, we help children build empathy for both animals and people. Through our Red Rover Responders program, we provide emergency shelter for animals in natural disasters like Hurricane Harvey or man-made disasters like hoarding or puppy mills. And finally, through our Red Rover Relief program, we provide financial and emotional support for pet owners in need of emergency veterinary care and their pets, as well as assistance with the cost of boarding to help domestic violence victims escape with their pets. And that's our Safe Escape program, which I think most of you are probably familiar with. All right, and so our Red Rover Safe Housing Grants. After we started offering the Safe Escape grants for a number of years, we learned more about the issue of pets and domestic violence, and we knew that as helpful as the Safe Escape grants are, unfortunately they're just a Band-Aid on the problem, and we wanted to be involved in creating a more permanent change, so we created the Safe Housing Grant Program. Our safe housing grants allow domestic violence shelters to have protocols in place to completely remove the barrier that pets have historically posed to families finding safety. To date, we have given grants to 61 different domestic violence shelters across the country and have distributed over $287,500 in grant funds since 2012. For this year, due to a very generous grant, the amount that we're able to offer for safe housing grants jumped from about $6,000 to up to $20,000. So I know that we're going to be able to offer these larger grants through 2018, so for both our May and October deadlines. But after 2018, we can't guarantee that we will have that amount of funding available, so we may have to reduce the amount of our safe housing grants. So all that is to say, if you're planning on applying, apply this year. And we have partnered with Allie Phillips and her organization, Sheltering Animals and Families Together. She has put together a safety manual with guidelines and procedures on housing pets on site. It discusses housing options, building community partnerships, and has examples of forms that can be used for intake and housing. Alrighty, so our safe housing on-site grants are where our safe housing program began. These grants help domestic violence shelters build pet-friendly spaces at their shelter so that people and pets can stay at the same location. Some domestic violence shelters renovate individual rooms to make them pet-friendly by using tile or linoleum or laminate flooring. That makes it easier for them to clean and sanitize while the pet is there, and then disinfect between clients. Other shelters set aside space or repurpose rooms like a garage or a laundry room or storage room so that kennels can be moved into the shelter to house dogs and cats while their pet parents stay in family housing. And lastly, a lot of domestic violence shelters actually opt to build a kennel on shelter grounds so that animals are on site but not in the shelter building itself. Sometimes it's a barn conversion or a shed conversion. Sometimes it is built new from the ground up. We've even seen shelters combine in-room housing with an outdoor kennel by installing a dog door between rooms. So it doesn't have to be one of the three options. It can be multiples of them together. Of all the safe housing options that we currently offer, this one honestly is the one that we hope that most domestic violence shelters can offer in the future, just because it keeps everybody together in one location, pets and people, and that minimizes stress for the family and for the animal. But that said, we absolutely understand that on-site pet sheltering sometimes just isn't an option for some shelters, which is why we expanded our safe housing program to include options that we hope will fit every domestic violence shelter's needs. And now I'm going to be showing some examples of what previous safe housing on-site grant recipients have built to house animals for their clients. So this is Underground Railroad, Inc., and they received a grant from us in 2014. They built 2 separate kenneling spaces, one for up to 6 dogs and one for cats and other small animals, as well as a storage room for pet supplies, an outdoor play area, and in the dog kenneling space, they included a wash station as well as an exam station and pet visitation room. So they did a whole lot. They dedicated a large amount of their shelter to this renovation. The Lee Shore Center received a grant from us in 2014. They already accepted animals, but they needed to expand what they could offer and build a new kennel because their old one just didn't have enough space to cover their needs, or really to cover the needs of animals in Alaska. The Lee Shore Center has actually been housing people and pets on site since they opened in 1985, so they had a lot of experience on what they needed to do for people and pets, just needed a bit of help in expanding what they could offer. Their advice really is to be very clear on pet intake guidelines so that both staff and clients know what their roles are with regard to caring for animals. And Domestic Abuse and Women's Network, or DAWN, received our grant in 2015. They built a small dog run attached via a dog door to their ADA accessible room so that service animals could have some outside time. They also constructed 2 outdoor kennels as well as a quiet kennel for dogs who needed some solitude. And all of that is surrounded by a fence so that the animals can have some supervised outside playtime. Their advice to people looking to build is that it's absolutely worth the effort and extra work for the shelters to keep families and animals together, that pets help people in crisis feel more peaceful and focused on moving forward in their lives, and that pets are an extra support and calm for people experiencing trauma. They've also seen that survivors are less likely to leave a relationship if they can't bring their pets, so being able to offer somewhere where everyone can be together. They've definitely seen an increase in people willing to leave a dangerous situation. The Linc Family Resource Center received our grant in 2013. They built a covered kennel outside, and they use large crates to make their rooms pet-friendly for smaller animals. In the pictures, I don't know if you can see, but one's got a little puppy, and then one's got a tiny orange kitten. Their advice with regard to pet housing would be to be consistent in requiring pets to have up-to-date shots and make sure that you have relationships in place to assist your clients in getting those if they're needed, because keeping your pet population in the shelter healthy is not difficult to do, but you do definitely have to make sure that everyone is as healthy as possible before they get in there. And shots are one good way to do that. And then finally, Emergency Support Shelter in Longview, Washington. This one we were actually lucky enough to go down there and help them to get their shelter pet friendly. We used volunteers from our Red Rover Responders program, and we teamed up with an organization called Rescue Rebuild. They travel the country rehabbing animal shelters, and so they were a great fit to help us remodel these rooms to make them pet friendly. We remodeled 3 rooms in total in the shelter. We installed tile to make them easy to clean, built attached kennels outside that unfortunately I don't have a picture of, so that pets could get in and out, and installed dog doors in between them so that pets could get in and out. And there was actually a client with a pet in one of those rooms on the night that we finished. Do we have any questions that I can answer on this before I move on? Fantastic. So one of our new offerings, Safe Housing OffSite Grants. After we were offering our safe housing on-site grants for about 6 years, and after having spoken with a lot of domestic violence shelters, we found that some shelters simply were not able to offer pet housing at their shelter. Some had insurance issues or leases that wouldn't allow pets, but mostly places just didn't have the space. Either it was a small shelter that was in a home and there was no way to effectively separate people and pets, or there were no outside spaces that made it more difficult. And so these are the options, the Safe Housing Offsite and the Safe Housing Startup Grants that we've come up with to try to help every domestic violence shelter provide assistance for people and their pets. Safe Housing Offsite Grants allow a domestic violence shelter to partner with someone in their area who already has experience kenneling animals, like an animal shelter or a rescue sanctuary. The pet housing would be built at the partner organization and would be dedicated to housing the pets of domestic violence survivors who are staying at the domestic violence shelter. Since the partner organization already has experience kenneling animals, they should already have a lot of the protocols in place that can be easily adapted to caring for survivors' pets. Like the on-site grant, applicants build relationships in their communities to help with veterinary care, possible overflow housing, and any other needs that they might have that the community can help to provide, like possibly food or toys or anything like that. And our Safe Housing Startup Grant is actually most like our Safe Escape Grant, at least that's how we're envisioning it. This grant is a springboard to help domestic violence shelters establish their own boarding program for the pets of their clients. The startup grants can fund up to 2 years of program costs associated with boarding pets. So the actual cost of boarding, vaccinations, that kind of stuff. We can't pay for staff time, but that is likely to be pretty minimal with regard to this type of program. We definitely encourage applicants to make relationships with multiple boarding facilities and veterinarians in their area so that no one business feels burdened. And establishing relationships in your local community hopefully will encourage businesses to provide discounts so that these funds can go as far as possible. We've definitely found that communities like helping each other. So when you reach out and ask and they know that their funds are being used just for people in their community, they're oftentimes a lot more willing to help. And one side benefit to our startup program is that if you do decide to make your domestic violence shelter pet friendly in the future, you've already got many of the relationships that you need to have in place, so that will make the work a little bit less once you do, because while the Safe Housing Startup Grant is a one-time grant, it does not preclude you from applying for the Safe Housing on-site or off-site grant. So you can apply for both. And with regard to the Safe Housing on-site grant, you can apply a second time if you're planning on expanding your boarding. So if you find that what you built initially is fantastic, but does not quite cover your needs, you're welcome to apply again. And so these are some of the more frequently asked questions. These questions mostly relate to our Safe Housing On-Site program because that's the only one we've been offering up to now. But we do have an FAQ for each of the safe housing options that's available on our website, and we'll update those FAQs as we start receiving applications and questions for the off-site grant and the startup grant. So the biggest one that we get asked really is, what if residents are allergic to pets? It's a really common question and a stumbling block that pretty much everyone goes over. And it's fairly simple to move past this one. Having air filtration systems in rooms really helps with pet dander. Having cleaning protocols in place for your clients to make sure that they're sweeping and cleaning, and also making sure that the animals don't have a lot of contact with other residents in the shelter. They shouldn't be allowed to roam free or anything like that. And some shelters even make allergy medications available to residents. so that if there is someone who just unfortunately has a reaction, that can be offered to them. I know if there's space, many shelters have chosen to have their pet-friendly rooms in a part of the shelter that's a little bit removed from everyone else. So if there's a wing that has 1 or 2 rooms that you wanted to make pet-friendly, then just dedicate that portion of it to pets, and that's just where people with pets stay. Another question we get a lot is, do you have to accept all type of pets? And absolutely no. Being able to accept any animal is going to be better than accepting none. So if all you're able to do right now is small dogs and cats, then that's okay. Do small dogs and cats. If all you can do is cats, that's okay. Just do cats. Basically, anything that you're able to offer is going to be absolutely fantastic. And once you see what the needs are in your community, at that point you can decide whether or not you want to expand. Another one is, should pets interact with other residents? And generally that answer is no. These animals are usually stressed, and animals don't always behave in predictable ways when they're stressed. So having minimal contact with other residents is going to cut down the possibility that animals could snap or just scare another resident, because we want everyone to be as comfortable as possible. And most of the forms that you're going to need, you can currently find in the safety manual. We're hoping to be able to offer some more specific forms to each safe housing option in the future, but for right now, the safety manual should be able to get everybody started with what's necessary. The memorandum of understanding, the MOU, is generally going to be between you and a boarding facility or you and animal shelter somewhere, so that you've just got a relationship in place. It says this is, who we're taking and how long we're taking them, etc. The shelter supply checklist is really going to be useful if you're doing on-site, because that way you can know what types of supplies you're going to need. The intake form, resident and shelter, is really there so that you can outline guidelines for both you and your resident, that this is what we expect of you, this is what we expect of your animal with regard to staying here, how long it's going to be, what you need to do to take care of the animals, etc. The content and release for boarding is generally going to be something that boarding facilities already have. And this is going to be useful for the startup grant, but also for on-site grants, because you're going to want to have a relationship in place with a boarding facility so that they can take any overflow or animals that for whatever reason aren't able to be housed on site. And basically that form is to say, this animal is technically being relinquished, because if it's not picked up, then that animal becomes the property of that boarding facility or animal control. If they pick up their animal, then that form means nothing, thankfully. But it's just in place for legal reasons, so that there's a plan for the animal in case they need to relinquish responsibility of them. And then finally, how do we apply? So all of these grants start at redrover.org, safe housing. Each grant from there has its own page, its own guidelines, FAQ, and application. You can request a PDF version online. There's a little email link that you can click that'll come straight to us, and we'll send you out a PDF version so that you can prepare your answers before submitting your application. There's also a budget on each of those. The downloadable budget is specific to each program, so be sure that you're downloading the budget from the program you wanted to apply for. I absolutely recommend that you use that budget, because it's set up for you to input the information that we're really looking for. And I made it, and I think it would be really neat if you used it. And staff is always happy to discuss any questions or concerns that you might have before, during, or after your application. We're definitely here to help you through this process. We want to help you be as successful as possible. And I've just got a few testimonials because I think that those are fantastic. These are from both our Safe Housing program and our Safe Escape program. These two are from our Safe Housing program. And safe housing at this point is animals just being on site. I really love the people heal the pets and the pets heal the people. It's worth the extra work on the end of the shelter. I just think that's such a very simple and yet really appropriate statement for this program, because it's just so true that the more they get to stay together, the easier it is for them to heal. And then from our Safe Escape grant program, so these would be applicable to all the programs, but I think even more applicable to our safe housing startup program. And then finally, we're at the point where I can answer questions if there's anything that you wanted me to address verbally that Rachel hasn't already answered. And so it looks like I haven't got anything that's come up while I've been speaking, but if you've got a question, definitely feel free to chat it now, and we'll talk about what you'd like answered. Unless I've just done an awesome job and covered everything that everyone needs to know, in which case, go me. All right, that seems to be the case, so thank you. If you have any questions afterwards, definitely email us, and we can discuss it on a one-on-one basis. And then here's the list of resources where we got the information from, and our grant. So redrover.org/safehousing is where you want to go to start this process. And if you're looking for more information on Allie Phillips' safety program, that's where the manual comes from, alliephillips.com. There's also a link to the safety manual on our website, so you can get to that safety manual from redrover.org/safe housing. And I think we're going to do one more poll before we let you go, if you have time. So when are you planning to apply for our Safe Housing grant? Fantastic. I am super excited that everyone's planning to apply this year, because that's a good choice, because $20,000 is a lot of money. And I look forward to seeing applications this May. That's very exciting to me. Alrighty. And so this is me, and this is Rachel, Laura Molesky and Rachel Hughes. We are the people who have been hosting your webinar for today. Thank you so much for being here. Again, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to email us. We're going to be sending out a link to the recording of the webinar, so you're welcome to respond to that. And I think that's about it. Thank you so much for participating today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.